So I can maybe to also help set a context. Again,
Yeah, like introducing yourself.
I'm Jeffrey Archer. I'm the head of Reference at the University of Chicago Library. I wear another hat. I'm also the bibliographer for business and economics, so I buy all the materials for business and economics. I'm the primary contact for the Department of Economics and the Graduate School of Business. I have been actually here at the University of Chicago for 16 years and have always been the business librarian and then head of reference for the last 10. I have an undergraduate in economics and my master's in library science. And then research preparation, what issues do you think students have with research? I think there are two issues. One is a student formulating sort of what their information need is,
Mm-hmm.
and then where do they go to meet that information need. And beyond the secondary research, finding articles about a topic, because that's one whole vein. And there's also the whole move for, at least here at the University of Chicago, particularly with the undergrads, the idea of using primary sources. So how to get people to the right primary sources, whether electronic or whether they're still print or microfilm. The other challenge when I just think of like an app to get people in is that when you're dealing with different disciplines, somebody's primary sources don't fit the primary sources or even sources for research didn't fit neatly into books or journals. So in my area of business, it could be economic indicators, so you're needing to look at economic indicator databases, or company information including analyst reports, company financial databases. So to me there's the idea of how specialized is a general tool, how much information is in a general tool that meets most people's basic needs, but then do you allow an opportunity for somebody to get to really what's going to meet their needs. So for example, in my case there are general article databases like an EBSCO's Academic Search Premier. A business tool student could search in that and find some basic articles maybe on a topic. But because of the coverage of that journal, they're going to coverage of that database, they're going to miss a lot of the journals that would be covered in a business-specific article database like ABI Inform, Business Source Complete, which are then the primary article databases for a business school student. But for them to do any type of real research, then they have to go beyond those articles about stuff. They need to look at company financials. So then you're in another whole database that has another structure, and those types of databases, once you get outside of articles, the other types of databases are ones that have their own interfaces that you can't do an API or something that will query the database and give you information back. You're really forced to use individual databases, and the same is true within, I believe it's chemistry. They have some of these databases that you actually put in diagrams of chemical structures, and it's a type of interface that is totally different than doing article research. I think the other thing that students have an issue with, and we find it even sitting at the desk now, is they don't understand. They could put something in Google Scholar and get something back, or just even Google. But if they have a citation, many of them don't know what tool to use. So if they have an article citation, they see a title of an article, the author, the name of the journal, and the page numbers, and they go into something like our library catalog and they put the title of the article in the library catalog expecting to get something back. But since they don't understand that a library catalog will only have the names of the journals, not what's inside the journals, so they're also getting frustrated by using the major library search engine for our catalog, and they're not getting something back, but it's because they're not putting in the right information.
Mm-hmm.
So do you build an app that allows you to put in all those pieces of information and it then know how to interact with our systems like a library catalog or our article database to get to more information from the information that they give you.
Wow.
So that to me is
Uh-huh.
sort of the complex things, but we do know from our own research and from working with students when we teach them in classes on conducting research, that many of them don't, if they're given a citation, they don't know how to get to the full text.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll search for the full text in the wrong databases. So how do you fix that?
Mm-hmm. What about like research? Do you think students know where to find the right stuff?
No, I don't.
And do you think that maybe the solution may not be an iPad, but like actually just instructing students on like how to actually conduct research?
I think there's if you look at it holistically, I think that's where we've been successful lately. For example, in the undergraduate program here, the college, in the history department, for example, all history students are required to write a BA thesis, and if they take their entire fourth year, in addition to classes, they have to complete a BA thesis.
Mm-hmm.
When they take a seminar at the beginning of their fourth year, we actually provide instruction during the first 3 times that they meet, the library does. And the way we see that is that we're providing a baseline with understanding libraries' basic resources, understanding how to do secondary research, and then we do a third one on primary research. With that information out of the way, then it's easier for students to navigate our website and to navigate the resources, so that if they need help again, they need help because they're having problems with the appropriate resource. They're not having problems identifying where do I go for books or articles or for images of, like we have a database of Civil War diaries.
Mm-hmm.
They would know through our sort of instruction how to see what sources we have on the Civil War, and we get to the point where they would see the Civil War diaries. But maybe to make the most of it, then they might come to the desk and ask us for assistance with a particular database. But without that instruction, what we find is that if someone's not having instruction, even business school students, if they come to the desk, to be honest, most often they don't understand how the world is organized in terms of information. They see a Google or a Yahoo and they just think, put something in, get something back. And that's sort of what I always like to say, that a good librarian professes to know nothing, just where to find it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this whole idea of helping people understand how information is pulled together, how it's organized, what are resources, and then that allows somebody to navigate it.
Mm-hmm. Now, while we were investigating undergrad student behaviors regarding research and studying, it comes down to the fact that many people just Google or like use major search engines. Now, doing doing literature survey
Mm-hmm.
on the same topic, it turns out that general search engines only scan barely 0.03% of the actual information on the web.
Yeah.
Do you how do you think that libraries can tackle this problem that students are more likely to use something that is easy to find, like something you can use just in your in your bedroom, in your house, compared to going to the library and using the actual sources?
Well, and I guess there's a difference too. Most all of our databases you can access from home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's somehow getting the student to see the benefit or the added value of using a library database or resource. So if we take Google Scholar, most students are going to use Google Scholar.
Mm-hmm.
What we've done is that we provide instructions on our website so that, particularly if you're off campus, you use Google Scholar, you click on the link for the article, you're taken to a publisher's website, and it says, please pay to see this article. We recognize we can't get everyone off of Google Scholar, so that we've incorporated essentially a tool that's it's SFX, but we call it and label it Find It. so that we show students how to turn on Find It when they're in Google Scholar. So if they find an article that they want, they click on the Find It button, they authenticate as a student, and then it will then link them to the paid article or the paid journals that we have access to. And that way, it doesn't disrupt them from going to a Google Scholar. It's just that the problem is that many databases provide information that will never get in Google Scholar. The publishers aren't willing to provide information of a Google Scholar to Google Scholar. And then the other element, while Google Scholar allows you to, in some cases, to search the titles and even the full text, even if you can't see the full text, there's an element, again, of instruction in terms of teaching students the added value of an index. So, for example, Business Source Complete is the major article database for business. So what the producers of Business Source Complete does is that they have staff that they get the latest electronic issue, say, of Harvard Business Review. They sit there, they put in the title, the author. If there's an abstract, then they put that there. Then they assign subject headings and geographic headings and company headings. So you're getting a lot of added value when you're doing the index. It's just that how do you then help a student to understand that you get all of this extra value added because people are analyzing the information and then they're putting that information up. So you're getting more than just a data dump and a sort of a data mine that you get out of Google Scholar. That's why the hits are sort of all over the place. You don't have that refined thesaurus. Each database has its own special vocabulary for subject headings that provide more. Take a term like interest. If you put interest in a general database, it could be people's interest in something. Whereas if you put interest in a business database and you limit to interest as a subject, it's the same term, but then because of the vocabulary of that specialized database, you're getting the most appropriate results.
How is the University of Chicago's library tackling this problem? Or do you guys have this problem at all?
Well, we have this problem all the time. That's why we're a very busy reference desk, and we have phone calls. We also, there's also the element of meeting students at the time of need where they are. So from the library's homepage, if you click on Ask a Librarian, you can fill out a form and send us an email form, and we get back within 24 hours. But we also, from 9 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 5 on Friday, and noon to 5 on Saturday and Sundays, we're also offering a chat reference service. So there's a box on our Ask a Librarian that if you were doing research, and I just had someone a moment ago, they were wanting to compare northern and southern newspapers' coverage of the Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case. They didn't know where to go. So they asked me this through chat, so I was able to say, well, we have a whole guide on finding historical newspapers. Let me send you the link. So I sent them the link. They could open it up, and then I walked them through how to use the resources. They also were an international student, so they didn't know, well, what's a southern and a northern newspaper. So I helped them identify Atlanta, whatever the Atlanta newspaper was. That would be your southern one, and maybe Chicago or I forget the other one. Chicago or Boston would be a good northern one. Don't use the New York Times because that's more of an international kind of level paper. But we were able to do that all with probably somebody who was off campus, an international student, but because of the way our system's set up, they were able to authenticate and get into the databases. So I think that's, in some cases, that's one way to do it, is to provide very easy, from the library's homepage, a very quick way for people to ask questions for as many hours as the day that we can actually staff it. The other element is to get involved in classes where there's going to be a lot of research, and to see if faculty can design the research questions in a way that's going to have students use appropriate resources. So for example, sometimes we have students come to the desk, I need 3 articles on blah. not a very good assignment, because what are they going to do? They could just go to JSTOR.
Yeah.
And anything that you find in JSTOR, you know, is going to be in full text. So that meets one need, but that doesn't help someone get into the specific resources of their discipline, because most disciplines have their own article databases.
And JSTOR is very general.
But JSTOR is excellent in that it has the full archive of the journal that's there. The problem is that JSTOR usually has an embargo. So, for example, the American Economic Review, a primary journal for economics, they have an embargo, so they don't have the latest 3 years. Whereas if you start in EconLit, which is the major article database for EconLit, that's going to link you to the latest American Economic Review articles.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's working with faculty to either have us come in and provide an appropriate bibliographic instruction, or doing a research guidance on doing research in that discipline, because again, each discipline is going to be different. So if we are doing something for history, it's going to be very different than what we would do for an English literature class, which would be very different than what we would do for an economics class. I think that's really going to be the key, that you need to have people providing instruction who understand the nature of the discipline that the class is focusing on. So they wouldn't send me to a literature class. I could do some basic literature, English literature review kind of stuff, but it would be more appropriate for the English librarian to do that kind of instruction. That way she understands the whole research process and all of the types of resources that are in her field, versus business, which is going to have a totally different set of resources.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's a big problem, because it requires for faculty to reach out to librarians, because librarians love to do this stuff. We would love to do these kind of classes all the time, but it's faculty understanding that there's a need for it, making the classroom time, and coordinating with the librarian so that the librarian is providing the appropriate instruction.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me like it's more than an app to solve this problem. It's like, you need faculty working together with librarians, working together with students to just build up overall frame of research behaviors that are more appropriate.
Well, and that doesn't dissuade building an app, but it to me, if you build an app, what do you want to solve with an app? So, for example, if you know that in the broadest sense, that students need a way to quickly find articles on their own, maybe you build an app that is able to search 4 or 5 databases at once. They do the search. The app searches against the databases that they're authorized to use, and you bring back the results into the app. And if a student wants it, they can click on the link and go away and read that article. Maybe the app sort of meets a general sense, which would help people do more than just JSTOR. So I don't know, for example, do you have like academic search?
Yeah, we have that JSTOR.
So I mean, maybe there's a way in your app that you guide people to do in a single search box, that you're searching JSTOR and academic search.
Mm-hmm.
And that might that might get some students' needs done, but then maybe part of the app would do the student justice by saying, not only give them results, but say, remember also to check, and maybe a link to the full list of all the databases that an IIT student would have. So maybe not only does the app, I think unless the student's going to get something back immediate from an app, they're not going to use it. But make sure that you make links to, or ways to connect to the broader resources that they have, and not just quick app, quick answers, and then allow the student to believe that's all there is.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm starting to understand what role an app really can do. It's more of like being a little link, maybe, you know, like providing like an easy and fast access to databases, but also that app has to make the student know that there is more, and that this is like very limited, right?
Yeah, I mean, or it could be that your app allows students to narrow, to help think of information in terms of even different veins. Maybe your app starts off, allows students to choose, ask the students, what do you need? Books, articles, newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And if they choose books, that maybe your app then allows you to search the library's catalog. If they choose articles, maybe then that app allows them to search one or two of your big aggregated article databases. If they choose newspapers, maybe they get a window, because many of our databases have widgets that can live on web pages, and I would imagine even live within apps. So for example, ProQuest, you probably have some newspaper databases through either ProQuest or EBSCO. They have apps or widgets that could be embedded into other apps or widgets. So maybe from that front page, books, articles, newspapers, you click newspapers, and then you have a branded widget still within your app that allows the students to search for newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, and then the last button, I need more. That then takes you maybe to the library's page that has the full list of all the databases they have access to. So I think, you know, there's always ways to break down sort of what students' needs are in categories. But for example, if it's a business school student, they're not going to be as helped by books, articles, and newspapers, because they're going to think companies. Or if it's a chemistry student, they're looking at whatever those chemical diagrams and stuff are, so that you also up front sort of make the scope, in defining your scope, know what it's not going to do. How's that?
Sounds good. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I understand that we have to make sure that the students don't take this as, you know, like like scholarly material for granted, like, you know, just make it the equivalent to Google but on an iPad app.
I think the other thing that, and this is where I don't know if you build the app to do it or you help guide people to do it. One thing that we've found helps students in doing their research is to also show them, and we do classes on tools like RefWorks or Zotero. Do you use either one of those?
Not that I know.
Okay. So for example, Zotero is a plugin that you load into Firefox web browser. So if I'm on the library's catalog and I pull up a couple books in my list, Zotero knows that I'm looking at 3 different books, and I can hit a couple links, and it pulls all the information about those books into folders.
Mm-hmm.
And then what Zotero does is it manages all your citations. So if I'm in a ProQuest newspaper database, if I'm looking at a newspaper article, it knows I'm looking at a newspaper article, and I click on I want to cite this later, so it pulls all the information, page numbers, title, author, all that stuff into essentially a database of citations.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens at the end is student, as they're writing the paper, they use that Zotero plugin to actually create their bibliographies. So I'm sure that you really enjoy at the end of your research project typing in your bibliography.
Mm-hmm.
If you use Zotero or RefWorks, RefWorks is a web-based tool that we use as well, so that if you're in academic search and you know you're going to use article 1, 5, 8, and 15 through 30, you add all those to your folder within academic search.
Mm-hmm.
You click on your folder, you click on export, and it exports all the citations, all the abstracts into a web citation management tool, which also has a plugin for Word, so that while students are writing, if they have to write footnotes, they say, I'm using this reference here, drop it in. Drop in the next footnote, drop in the next footnote, and then with 3 buttons, it will generate a bibliography for them. And if they need, oh, I made a mistake, that bibliography is in MLA style, I need to do it in Turabian. They change one drop-down menu to Turabian and it'll do another whole bibliography. So there's no typing.
I know. I hate going that part. That's like.
But Zotero's free.
Uh-huh.
It's a free product out on the web for anyone to use.
How do you spell that?
Zotero.
Okay, yeah. I'm actually. I have to work on a project.
Okay.
That will be really.
But it's
tough.
very easy. I mean, you install it like you do many other plugins within Firefox, and it's very easy to use. But what's nice is, it has the plugin itself. They've worked a lot with the big database providers like LexisNexis or ProQuest and EBSCO and FirstSearch and RuralCat. They've worked with all those companies so that they write the appropriate code so that Zotero knows if you're using a RuralCat record that it's a book record, and they know to import all the right information about a book. The publisher place, the date of publication, the author, the title, if there are editors. So you have all the right information when it comes time to citing. And to me, that's another whole role of helping students do research, is letting them understand you have to cite your work, and the best way to cite it or manage that is to use a citation tool. I mean, we pay $15,000 a year for students to use RefWorks here.
Mm-hmm.
But many of them still use Zotero because they like that it's portable and it's on their own computer.
Yeah. Do you think there are some other topics we haven't talked about yet?
Let's see. Yeah, I see them use Google a lot. I see them use JSTOR more than they should, because of the limitations of the embargo. And even, I think and this is where each university subscribes to different levels of JSTOR. So we get people coming here and they're surprised, whoa, there's a lot more, because there's modules of JSTOR which not all libraries subscribe to. But even for economics, JSTOR may have 50 journals, say maybe the core 50, but they're missing the other 350 academic economic journals that would be indexed in Econ Lit. So I think that's also that if you're looking at secondary research, faculty use JSTOR and the students then know to use JSTOR, but they think that's all there is to JSTOR. And if they're thinking of a current topic, maybe the stock market crash and the current recession, they're not going to find academic articles for the last 3 years because of that embargo. So in order for them to do full research, they need to go beyond the quick JSTOR.
And you're mentioning primary and secondary resources. What do you mean by that?
So there's primary sources. So in business, it would be financial data, the raw financial data. In history, it would be journals, it would be government documents, because these are primary sources. This isn't secondary. Primary sources would also be newspapers, because it's journalists who are reporting the news. There are transcripts for most of the major news outlets, so radio news, NPR, all the broadcasts, or CNN, for example, you can find that all of those transcripts, at least for the last 10 years, in databases like LexisNexis or Factiva. So those are primary sources, and then there's also special collections, which in our case it's our old and rare books, but also our archival manuscripts. So, for example, if someone was looking at doing civil rights in the Chicago area in the early 1900s, we actually have the Ida B. Wells papers. So all of the handwritten stuff that Ida B. Wells did for fighting for civil rights, we have those here. So some